Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unlock Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson. You guys are in for an absolute treat today with my very special guest. And normally I have guests from all over the world, but sometimes it's just really, really lovely to have somebody who's actually just from up the road. The amazing Wendy Nash is here to join me today, and we're going to be talking about the perils of positive thinking. Now, if you're anything like me, I grew up. Wendy may even tell you some of these stories of her childhood and her upbringing, but I certainly grew up in a world where we were taught to be positive. People love positive people. You attract other like-minded people if you are positive. There are so many sayings around, why you should be positive, why you should empower yourself to have a level of positive thinking. And we're going to talk about, well, the perils of positive thinking today. So, Wendy is actually a somatic psychotherapist. She has been working in this field for, I'm going to say, a number of years. She's got a bachelor's degree of, let me just make sure that I get this absolutely right, a Bachelor of Psychology in honours. And she also has been working through the work of loving kindness meditation and pro-social behavior. So I want to share with you guys how, we're going to share with you how she's been working with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners to really get in touch with, I suppose, looking at and working on their internal state of mind. And how do we do that so that we can kind of combat some of these, perils of positive thinking. So welcome to the show, Wendy. It's fantastic to have you here. Love the fact that you are literally, when I say down the road, I mean she's like an hour up the road from me. So you just never know. We might be able to catch up in person at some point. But welcome to the show. Great to have you here. So tell me a little bit about how this is all come about. I know you've got like a vast sort of background and experiences that you've gone through over the last kind of 20 or 30 years, and even your upbringing has brought you to where you are today. So I'm going to let you share and the nutshell version of how you've come to be doing what you're doing today.
Thanks. Thank you. Before I start, I do like to acknowledge that where we've come from sort of determines where we're going, and that I am calling from Gubbi Gubbi country, which is the Aboriginal country that is basically where we are. Well, where I am, you're in a different country, I think, probably. But so I do like to always acknowledge the elders past and present. I think it's really important to just know where we've come from, and it's we come with stuff, and that's what takes us into the future. I also wanted to say thank you very much for letting me be on your show. I'm a bit intimidated by the live experience, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit nervous.
That's totally okay. And don't be. I can tell you, all the viewers are going to say, hey, Wendy, we love you. And they're a whole lot of fun. So don't feel nervous by that at all.
Thank you. And I just wanted to do a little correction. I did train as a somatic psychotherapist. It's a 4-year training, and it was phenomenally useful. But I actually work as a coach, as a meditation coach, just because it's an insurance thing. I don't work psychotherapeutically. So I just wanted to clarify that one. But it very, very much informs my practice, because it really helps me understand people at a much deeper level than rather stick to the very surface stuff. So I guess you wanted me to talk about how I got to here. So I was raised with positive thinking. My mum's a real positive thinking kind of person. And I think post-war, it was really important. People were absolutely devastated from not only the Second World War, but the First World War. And it was absolutely horrific. And the only way people could really get through all that was to say, let's look for the positives. And I think that when people have very difficult, when the whole culture is like that, you've just got to find your way. And I think that time, sort of the baby boomers raised with that, I think it was a really important contribution, because you don't want to be stuck in the mire and the darkness all the time. You do want to look for the positives. But as it happens, both my sister and my father died when I was a child. And to always be like, yes, but you've got to look for the positives, it doesn't allow the emotional space to go, actually, I'm having a really hard time here. So I think our emotions are very shared, like we're human. And we kind of come into our own when we are in a shared experience like this. And so if you were to say something that was sort of was talked about a little bit difficult for you, for me to go, oh, well, look for the positives, it's not really allowing you to kind of enter into I'm not allowing you to kind of be felt and seen. And so that's where the problem is with the positive thinking. I learned that because I had quite a complex early life, as I just mentioned. And then I went and lived overseas, and I was really indoctrinated with the idea of positive thinking, but I just didn't know what to do with all this negative stuff and the feelings and the depression and the sorrow. So I just decided that I would really focus on actually figuring out who I am and what do I really feel. That's what I was really interested in. So that's why I did the psychotherapy diploma. That's why I did the psychology degree, and that's why I focused on it is pro-social behavior. So it's all about so it was loving kindness meditation and thinking kindly about people, which is really important. So I was working with a client yesterday, and she was and we're talking about finding the good bits. So it's what I'm saying is to not negate the good bits. And she said, oh, well, I went to work this time yesterday. And I said, well, what does work mean? And she said, oh, well, it's this. And I said, well, how did that arise for you? And she said, well, my mentor sort of gave me this list, started this list, and I needed to continue it. And so I said, so is your mentor paid? And she said, no, she does it. She offers that for free. So that's really looking for the lovely part that's kind, the offers of generosity, which I think is really important. Like it's so nice that you have offered to me this space and place to share what I know. But it's not, but also likewise, she also talked about how it was really difficult that she'd been offered this amazing situation. And she just said, I got just really nervous, and then I started blaming and doubting. And if I had just gone, oh, well, look for the positives, at least, this wonderful situation arose, it's sort of not really meeting the person. And what do you do with those feelings of going, well, I actually feel a bit doubtful and I feel a bit afraid. How am I going to be able to do that? And so it's finding balance with it. So that's
yeah. And I can understand why you would say, often when, say, you've got a problem, or like, for example, you lost your dad and your sister, and people say, well, look for a silver lining. I mean, I've just had a recent experience like that. I lost my mum earlier this year, and often we can think, or we say to ourselves, I know I've certainly done it, okay, well, if I think really positively, mum didn't have to suffer through that. But in truth, and that is true, but on the flip side of that too, there is all this emotion that comes with that, trying to work your way through, well, how do you actually really feel about that? And so therefore, if somebody just said, well, if you find this silver lining in that, that was a positive thing that, your mum passed at that time and she didn't have to suffer, it's almost as if they're dismissing the real feelings that you're having, and not really, like you say, not really seeing or hearing maybe the underlying messages that are attached to that the positivity that goes with. So I can totally, I'm just thinking about some very recent instances where that has been very, very relevant. And I know that, we talk about this sort of stuff in our own personal lives, but from a point of view of being a business owner, and I know you do a lot of work with entrepreneurs and business owners, which a lot of the folk that watch and listen to the show are, that sometimes we can tend to pick up those things and we take them with us because we are in my opinion, the whole person. You don't really have the option of being able to compartmentalize your life. You bring to, whether you want to or not, you bring the whole of you to whatever the situation is. And sometimes those unresolved issues, things that maybe we haven't been so introspective on, tend to show up in funny little places that we often least expect. So maybe we can talk a little bit about even some of that we see, from because it's going to happen in both our personal and in our business lives. And I think one of the things that hold a lot of people back is the fact that these things do show up over and over and over again in our professional lives. We don't always recognize them.
Yeah, so first up, I just wanted to say I'm sorry to hear that your mum died, and it is heartbreaking at some level. No matter how complex our relationships are with people like our parents. So some people, in your instance, it sounds like you had a really lovely relationship, but that's not the case for everybody. And it can be there's a lot of mixed feelings that can arise, but it sounds like you had a really lovely relationship with your mum, and it's left a bit of a hole there. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It's not always easy, and there are ups and downs. And in truth, it takes about 18 months for the cycle of the worst part of the grief to pass. So just to give you a bit of a heads up on, it's just going to be a bit of a roller coaster for quite a while. So I just wanted to speak to that. And how to include that with work in a work situation. So I work with people, and often they get funding rejections. It's quite difficult when you get a funding rejection because it's like, well, am I not good enough? Was I not well prepared? Do they think I'm no good? What sort of things can I have? And then how do you then deal with that? And then you've got to then go into maybe you've got a pitch coming up straight away. So how are you going to deal with that? And basically what I always say is, so one of the things I've been really looking at in the last couple of days actually is to start looking at the emotion of disappointment. So if you think about a business situation, in fact, any argument you've had or any relationship that's kind of been breached, often that's about disappointment. So if I'm disappointed that I didn't get my funding rejection, fundamentally, I'm just super disappointed because I was really banking on that money to be able to do X, Y, Z. If you don't recognize that disappointment is part and parcel of the process, and you just go, oh, well, I'll just skip over the top of that, that energy is just going to really it's going to sort of permeate, as you said, and kind of leak out. So I'm not saying you have to indulge in disappointment, but just simply to own it. So one of the things that I like to do is to just say, I feel disappointed. Yes, it's true. I feel disappointed. Leave it at that. Very, very simple. So it's through acknowledging that we are disappointed or sad or hurt or frustrated or joyful or delighted or happy or in love, it's beautiful to just acknowledge that we have all these wonderful emotions, and also that we feel angry. So it doesn't matter what feeling it is, but if we just say, yes, it's true, I feel, so now at the moment I feel a bit nervous. It's true, I do feel a bit nervous, and I can feel a little bit, I get a bit, do I look good and do I sound good and I'm making sense? I've got all that going on. But if I just go, I feel a bit nervous, I go, it's okay, actually. This is the human condition. It's the human experience. And I know that your listeners are probably very lovely going, I'm sure I know that feeling.
They'll be saying, it's okay, Wendy, you're good. You look good, you sound good, we're with you. They'll be absolutely doing that.
Exactly. But if I just said, I'm not nervous, I'm just going to be really chipper and I'm going to be upbeat and I'm going to be, it feels fake, you can really sense it. So you've got to just own it. And then once you've owned it, it kind of works through the body, comes out the other side. There's a sort of a sensation, a thickness that comes in the body. And then you can then go into your meeting, you pitch and just feel like, well, that was then. And that's in the past. And now I'm kind of coming forward with an open heart. It's not blocked or clouded by what I didn't want to own. So I didn't, like disappointment, if you don't own that, then, well, it'll kind of seep in there, as you said earlier on. So I'm hoping I've answered your question.
Yeah, you have. So with trying to get, because this is a real, I'm going to say there's a bit of an art to this. And the reason I say this is because, and I can put my hand up and say, I'm one of those people that has trouble relaxing, and I can remember recently, and my husband booking us in to go to something called, we call it the City Cave, and it's like I suppose you call it a soak house. So we went and did this infrared experience, and then you got to go into this room, and you're supposed to get in this pool, and it's supposed to be very relaxing, and it's got all these salts in it, and you basically float in the pool. And it was a couple's pool, so the two of us could go in there. And and the whole purpose of that, he took me there, it'd be great, you'll be able to relax and just switch off and not be able to, have the constant thinking and planning and all the things that, well, I tend to do on the regular, because that's just kind of has been the way, I'm going to say, not the way I am, but the way I've programmed myself to be over time. Right, I get into this room and we're both in there, and he's having this lovely old time, just relaxed, laying there, and I'm good with that for about 5 minutes. I lay for 5 minutes, might have been 20. I might have been doing myself a bit of an injustice by saying it was 5 minutes. Laying there for 20 minutes, nice and relaxed, until it starts, and you're thinking about, what's going on and what do I have to do, and what didn't go well and what should I be thinking instead, and all of these things. Next minute, he would say that he was almost in a whirlpool, and not a nice relaxing pool, because instead of Tracy laying there nice and relaxed, oh no, I'm pushing off the sides, thinking, oh, this is really cool, having a whole lot of fun in this pool when he's trying to relax. So one of the things, so why I've brought that particular story out, because I'm sure I'm not the only person in this world who finds it really hard to relax, and then taking that time, because I know you do a lot of work in terms of meditation and just being able to relax and take that time to get a little bit introspective. How does one do that and start doing it on the regular? Because I know a lot of the stuff that we experience as business owners can often be resolved when we just give ourselves a little bit of shush and quiet.
Exactly. So first up, I want to find out where that bath is, because I live an hour down the road from you. So I'm going,
there's loads of them everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, it is lovely.
You'll just after the program we can have a chat, because I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. So thank you for letting me know about that. As for what to do with that, actually, I'll lead you through a very simple technique and I did it in just before we came on air, just because I was feeling really nervous. So we'll do it together, and if any of your listeners want to do it, that's all good too. So it's a very short breathing technique. And first we just breathe in for the count of 4, hold for 2, and then breathe out for the count of 6. This is very short. It's about, 10 seconds, not long at all. So just breathe in for the count of 4, hold for 2, out for 6. Do that again. Hold for 2, out for 6, in for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. How are you feeling? How's your little mind chatter?
Oh yeah, there wasn't any. I was too busy concentrating on breathing in for 4, holding for 2, and breathing out for 6. You know what I mean? Your focus is in a different place.
So how does your body feel now? How does your mind feel?
Relaxed.
Okay. How long did that take?
Yeah, about less than 30 seconds.
Right. There you go. So next time, you can do this before you go into a meeting. You can do that before, like I did that before on coming on air. You can do that when you're in the bathtub, the pool thing with your partner. You can do it anywhere. I find it really, really helpful. And it also, if you're awake at night, it's really nice to do that when you're sort of like kind of going awake, and the mind is kind of really, it's quite difficult, so it's hard to sustain because it takes such a lot of effort, to maintain a mind that's on track like that. So really keeping that. And as for how to have a meditation practice, it is really good. There's a few different very simple techniques that take almost no time, that are just ways to just slow down for a quick sec. So one of them is it's called leave no trace. And that is when you get your cup of tea, you might have a dishwasher, but if you don't have a dishwasher like me, then instead of putting it down on the counter, you wash it up, you get the tea towel, you dry it, you put it in the cupboard. So you finish it. And it's like then you haven't got anything later. And it sounds like, well, that's not really a meditation practice, but it is a way of just slowing down so that you finish something. And then you aren't left with a pile of dishes apart from anything else. So likewise, when you go to the bathroom, you wash your hands afterwards, you get the cloth and you wipe out the sink, and then it's just slows down for a minute, and then become aware of what is the attitude you're bringing to that. Is it that, I should be finished this, and can we hurry up with this, or I don't have time for this, or this reminds me of, so-and-so who always wanted me to have a really clean house, and I really hate this. And that, whatever it is that's going on for you, it doesn't matter what it is, just to notice it. So that's another one that's really good. Another one is when you're walking. So if you've got to go just, down to the bus stop or the train station or somewhere like that, just to see how well you're connecting to the ground. And mostly you're supposed to sort of feel the sensations on the ground, but all of us wear shoes. So I find it easier to notice the movements of the ankles. And that's just to bring the conversation out of the head and then down into the feet so that it stops being so worry. Another one to try is when you're driving in your car or walking along or whatever it is, start to think about anything pleasant. So if it's a lovely day, not too hot, not too cold, it might be the feel of sun on your back and just how lovely that is. Equally, it might be that someone, so if you go back 24 hours to this time yesterday and just kind of think, well, what was I doing yesterday? Oh, well, so-and-so did that. And I was, that was actually really lovely because they did this kind thing for me, and somebody said a kind gesture, something kind to you, or perhaps your cat came up and just, said hello, or it doesn't matter how small it is, super tiny is better. And just go through the day and think of how many pleasant experiences you have. Not to get caught up into the whole grateful thing. I'm a bit funny about the gratefulness movement because I think it can be a bit more doing. Instead, all we're noticing here is how well are we receiving what is there. So, yeah, so that's that one. And then I've got one more meditation thing, which is when you get into bed at night, just set your timer on airplane mode, sit there for 60 seconds, and then just notice your body breathe. That's what, or you can do that breath counting that I did before, or think about pleasant thoughts, whatever it is. And then after about 1 week, try 2 minutes. And then after another week, 3 minutes. And it sounds like it's nothing, but actually I've got clients who have been sitting at 4 or 5 minutes for about 3 weeks. And if they don't go really slowly, then they kind of don't have time, and I'm not going to do this anymore. So that's that. Sorry, I cut you off. That's it.
No, I was just going to say, as you're talking through these techniques, it's apparent that it's really, or it seems that you're really, narrowing down your focus, and you're bringing that focus into the present moment, apart from when we're thinking about, a particular situation or a time or the yesterday, and trying to remember those feelings at that time. But in the main, it's thinking about, being present, being, grateful, if I can use that word, grateful that we're actually here and able to have a conversation like this, that I've met somebody new, that, all of the things that are positive and lovely about whatever's going on with you at that time, and just allowing yourself to be present in that moment.
That's exactly right. So when we started off the conversation, we started about the perils of positive thinking. And if you're having if you're having a really terrible time, like you would have had after your mother died, where are you? Actually, you're really just sad. And so if you kind of do the positive thinking thing, that's not where you are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's all it is. It's here we are is where we are. We don't have two times. We don't have the should time. We just have this time. There is no other time.
Yeah. And allowing yourself, or acknowledging what's going on with yourself at that time.
Right.
What I find quite interesting is that often we talk about, if I can talk about the positive self-talk or positive thinking that then turns into, positive verbalization of something. And often we are very, very kind to others,
Yeah.
but sometimes not always kind to ourselves. And I was watching something the other day, and he said, the number of times that I've actually stopped and thought about the things that I've said to myself, like, oh, you silly person, or why did you do that, or you shouldn't have done that, or God, you're a dipstick, or whatever the things are that, you tell yourself often when things don't go right. And he said, if you actually use those words with your best friend, would they be your best friend for very long? And, it was like, well, heck no, they wouldn't be. So this concept of speaking or treating ourselves as our own best friends, and being focused and aware and kind to ourselves first. What are your thoughts on that, and how, one can adopt that into their lives?
Yeah, so it's interesting. People do say that, and there is definitely truth. Like, I wouldn't verbalize to another person what I think, what I kind of my
It could be a little
auditory.
scary, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. But I actually don't think that we are kinder to others than we are to ourselves. Often, I've had some situations. I've just moved up to Queensland, and I've had some situations where I've kind of tried to buy things on Gumtree, which is like Craigslist, and I've had these replies back. And one person basically said I was a crazy lady, and another person said you're a pain. So I bet that those people would. I mean, it wasn't a
Wow.
direct quote, but it wasn't far from it. And I think that when we talk to ourselves in unkind ways, we actually talk about others in unkind ways. It's a bit like you were saying before. If you're disappointed or whatever it is, it seeps out. So it's because we're not in check with it. But the judgment that drives that conversation is kind of a judgment that's sitting there ready to be pounced on somewhere else. So for instance, so if you give me an instance where you talked negatively about yourself, maybe you were a bit disappointed with something that happened. So maybe it was about that incident where you're talking about with your husband.
I'm just trying to think, of a particular situation, and it's not necessarily, it's just that when you do something, for example, I can't think of something in particular, but you might say, "Oh, why did you do that, silly person? What did you do it like that for?" And I was actually speaking with one of my team members the other day, and it was what were we talking about? It was to do with an application that we were working on. And I went back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It was probably, I probably did something wrong there. Sorry about that." And she said, it's really interesting because a lot of the time, male and female type situations, she'd say, the male would blame it on the the application, whereas, you know, you as a female will often say, hey, the blame is on me. I'll take that on board, and I've obviously done something wrong. And so therefore we were like, darn, silly me. Why did I do it that way? So not necessarily, you know, and maybe there is, I would say there's a degree of negative self-talk, you know, oh, darn, silly me, you know, it's maybe not so as an acknowledgement, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done that a little bit differently. But with that a negative connotation that goes with it, you know, how damaging that can be.
It certainly, I mean, you know, like one time I did, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't have negative self-talk, you know, but I also noticed that I can be very critical of others. So I guess that's kind of what I'm alluding to. And one time I just thought I'll listen to it. And for some reason it was like up at volume 10 and I heard it and I was just like, wow, that is one hell of a, excuse my language, just an enormous kind of full-on horrible character assassination. And it went on for about, I just thought, I'm not going to interfere with it, I'll let it go. And it took about 3 days for the volume to go down. And now when of course I hear negative self-talk, I just go, oh yeah, well, it's negative self-talk. I'm not afraid of it anymore in the same way. Yeah, I think there can be some gender differences. I do think that it sounds like, I think it's really nice to take responsibility when we've made mistakes. So I just want to speak to that part of you that said, oh, I'm sorry, I think I made a mistake there. I think it's really important to register when we make a mistake and in that way. Because otherwise, how can you learn? Because if you don't register how many your own mistakes, then, well, everybody else is the problem, and then where are you? But then inner self-talk, I think that it really shows something about not being resourced enough in yourself. So it's sort of skimming over the top, and it's not really, for me, what I found is that inner critic talk arises when I feel disappointed in something I've done. So I haven't come up to the mark in some ways. So for me, it has a very strong flavor of disappointment. But you asked something else in there, and I've just suddenly gone blank. So I'm so sorry. You asked something about. I'm so sorry. I've just suddenly gone blank on your question.
It'd be like, I suppose. Well, the next question I've got for you then would be, if somebody is having, like, as a business owner, right, and we bring maybe some of these unresolved things to us, to our working environment, what sort of things do they show up as? What sort of things would you have you observed?
Okay.
Seeing these things sort of bubble up.
Okay, so one of the things, negative self-talk comes out. So I know what I was going to say. So there are basically 3 different characters. Most people fit within one of these 3. And they're either people who tend to be socially dominant, so I would fit in that category, and tend to be quite critical. And the form of critical takes on an angry style. So I tend to be what they call moving against. So Karen Horney talks about a moving against character, rub people up the wrong way, be forthright, very strident. Then you've got people who move away, and they're people who tend to be disengaged. They're sort of wanting to down-regulate the body sensations. They talk about everything is in balance. So that's that. And there's another one which is tends to be self-defeating, and it puts themselves under. So if I sort of say that I put myself above in the social dominant situation, they would put themselves below, and they do everything for everybody else, taking care of themselves last. So often those people have like 3 jobs and 10. I met a woman at uni, and she had 2 full-time jobs plus a full study load, plus she was caring for 2 autistic children and an elderly grandmother. It's not much of an exaggeration. Like, the body can only be available for a certain
so much.
Yeah, exactly. So of course she was living on junk food, and of course her body's going to conk out. You know, there's no two ways about that. My observation with those people who always put everybody else first is that there's a conversation about how people aren't dedicated enough. So they aren't working hard enough. I'm working really hard. So there's this real resentful tone that kind of starts to seep in. And that's just that person hasn't got good work-life balance. So I would say in that one. The inner critic, in terms of the social dominant one, it tends to be more blamey. So they should have done this and they should have done that and all that sort of stuff. The sort of more moving away one will just try and down-regulate anything. So just kind of try and it's a little bit blamey, but not nearly as harsh. So there's quite a lot of harshness in the first one, in that moving against type, like I have, and the other one will tend to be more maybe a bit dismissive. Oh, they didn't really mean it, or something down that end. Not fully engaged with the issue at hand.
And so when a business owner, identifies themselves in one of these three different areas and they recognize that, what are some of the I suppose leadership ramifications or things that they may find are not such good outcomes because they have these, I'm going to call them traits, maybe that are not acknowledged, that they haven't actually acknowledged them?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just basically acting out, isn't it? So, people are unhappy, they're unproductive. So one of my clients, he was like, they're not dedicated enough. And he's like that. But his co-founder is somebody who's more of my style, very abrupt, aggressive, hasn't learned about that. He probably has a narcissistic personality and he gets very blamey. And so there's a senior manager in his company, and the work starts to get really sloppy. It starts to, he's a bit demotivated, he's not there, he's not putting in the sort of full, he's not engaged, he's feeling disengaged. So when people aren't moving away, resigning, all that sort of stuff, that's pretty clear. I mean, when you think about people you like to hang out with, what are the qualities that you like in a leader?
Do you want me to answer that as a question?
Yep.
Okay. Somebody who's engaged, somebody who is present when you're actually talking to them, somebody who cares about the company, somebody who can lead by example, who's prepared to do what they're asking me to do. So those would be some of the things. That's just for me personally, what I like to see in in somebody that's either working with me or has been my superior in the past, and supportive, who's actually interested in you as a person.
Yeah, so they might ask questions, how did you arrive at that? So there's basically 4 questions. Well, I'll give you some 5 conversation kind of hints, which basically sums up, if you can do this, this is all you need to do in terms of your questioning skills, your conversational skills. So somebody comes to you with a problem and I haven't done this or something like that, then you might say, I failed to do that. So you said that the other day, on your app, it didn't quite come together. I'm sorry, I made a mistake on that. And then the first question to ask is, tell me more about the problem that's going on. So just start with, tell me more about that. The second one is to ask any questions that begin with what or how. Any other question syntax that begins with do, is, are, would you say, do you think, why, skip all those questions. They're really, really bad ways to frame a question, just because if I say, why did you do that? It's got a real accusatory tone to it. If I say, would you say, or do you think, then that's actually me. That's about what I want. That's
More
not
leading.
about what you want. Exactly. And is it this or is it that? It's too narrow. You're not getting enough answer. It's a closed question. So if you ask, what what happened with that, what were the circumstances that arose with that, what was the context that made you understand that, what was going on for you in your world that decision was made. That's one. Or how did you arrive at that conclusion? How did you understand that what was the correct, how did you understand the action or the need? And then the last one is, it's a slightly different thing, and it's to say, so say you've said, I've got this problem with my IT at this app, and I'm sorry, I made a mistake on that. And you go, oh, look, I'm sorry about that. It was a bit of an issue, and you've talked and you've gone something like, I made a mistake with A, B, C, D, E, F. And you might say something like, I was just really busy and I feel like I've made a big mistake, or something like that. And then you can say something like, what I hear you care about. So this is the sentence that's really useful. What I hear you care about is that it has to be right every time, that you don't make mistakes. Yeah, that's really true. It is really important that it's a really high standard. Or I really hear that you want a high standard here. Yeah, so that's that. And then it stops being a punitive adversarial conversation. It starts to really open up, and it's like, then when somebody feels like, in that instance, I want really high quality work. Yeah, so then you can ask more questions. Well, what are the circumstances or situations that work for you to ensure that your work is high quality? Is it that you're not drinking 2 liters of water a day, because that's the best way to keep your spirits up, drinking 2 liters of water a day? Is it that you're too busy, distracted, this, that, and all the rest? So that's whatever it is. You've then got opportunities to work together.
Absolutely. Someone's saying here that, and then it sounds more like a conversation rather than it being, I'm going to give you some feedback, or, and often when we think of it like that, as a conversation rather than I'm going to give you some feedback, or in a lot of cases, I'm going to give you some coaching on that. The person comes at it from a point of view of, okay, we're going to have a chat about it, and I'm actually going to, it's from a perspective of improvement rather than trying to find the negative or the things that I've done wrong in a particular situation. So I really like that. It's interesting. My husband's an investigator, so a lot of these things that you're talking about here, classic investigative, conversation starters to be able to really uncover what's gone on and what's happening in this particular situation, and getting to the bottom of something rather than it just being very superficial.
Yeah, and I just wanted to put in something there. So with the feedback and coaching kind of thing, that's really that perspective is you've got one above the other. So it's sort of like a parent-child kind of, lack of a better word, that kind of dynamic. And I think that can be too often manifesting in a workplace, that the boss somehow thinks that they're not talking to a grown-up adult with a whole lot of experience. But if you come through as a conversation, tell me more about what's going on for that sense of, excuse me, sorry about that, that sense of not being an equal, that sense of being an equal really allows, well, we're both humans here. How can we get the outcome we want? So, yeah, that's great. That I didn't know that that's what investigators do, but
they absolutely do. I hear them talking about these questions all the time, and they often will use them, obviously, at home too. So anyway, those sorts of things definitely are great ways of being able to create an equal and a level conversation, so you're both on the same level, on the same page, so to speak. In terms of like taking some of these things, because we've kind of gone full circle with this, right? It's like we started off talking about positive thinking, and often we're so brought up to think so positively and see the silver lining and everything, and wear your rose-colored glasses. And we've talked about how how often that can, I'm going to say, almost steals away from you the ability to be able to really feel and be in the moment. And so that's one of the, I see as the biggest peril of that kind of positive thinking all the time. It's not allowing yourself or dismissing what you really, really feel. And then talking about how do we often see this manifest or show itself in various different situations, whether it be, a personal situation or a business situation, and then being able to take that and maybe use the tools that you teach around meditation to bring us back to the present moment, to acknowledge and think about where we are at that time, and be kind to ourselves and give us that, I'm going to say, give us the time and the white space, I want to call it, to feel that, and gift ourselves, that level of presence. With wrapping up today, who would be the best kind, like, for you to be able to help people with this and be able to enable them to become, practice the art of being introspective? What are some of the major benefits you would see from somebody who would want to go down the path of working with you to adopt some of these practices into their life? What sort of person would be best suited to working with you, and what sort of outcomes could they expect to see if they adopt these practices?
Thank you. So people who actually want to learn who they are and how they are, what their mind is. I don't work with people who want to control the situation. So I had a client and he just wanted to have a still mind. And he had a very strong martial arts background. And so he wanted to just have the still mind. He wanted that. And that's not really the way that I work. So I don't work well with people if they're looking for a particular state of mind, I would say. I work well with people who are curious about what is really going on for them, and who want to shift something. So I have a client and he came to me because he was crashing and burning all his relationships because he was really angry all the time. So he would he realized that he had crashed his career in many instances, because although he's a brilliant guy, he was completely offensive often. So he's really motivated to think, well, I don't want to crash. I've started my own company. I don't want to crash my relationships. That's not going to go well. So he's recognized that. I work well with people who I work with somebody else, and he was working for a company, and then he went off and tried to start his own company. It was a lot more work than he thought, and he wasn't nearly prepared enough to leave the company so he ended up going back into contracting. But what he learned along the way was really useful for that process. And so he was really open to understanding what it means to be a leader. And basically, you can't be a leader unless you harness the norms and values of the followers. So you have to embody what it is that is. So if you are willing to be open to how you can do things differently, not by sort of skimming over the surface, but actually start to go, I'm going to put myself in a slightly uncomfortable situation, just to test what it's like, to inquire what's going on for me. I'm curious to see how this would be. Maybe it'll be horrible, and then I've learned that. But maybe I'll grow and I'll do something. So though anybody really who is interested in learning about how to experience life very differently, from the inside out. So I'm not very good with people who it's all about the outcomes and that sort of thing. What happens is when you change at the inside, by nature, you change the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So the outcomes are that people are less angry. They start to see they have real options. So the client I was talking with yesterday, she was talking about, she started to get really blamey with somebody. And then she realized that actually this was an opportunity that she had lost to say, I don't need to blame that person. There's something here in me that is the problem. It's not them, it's me. And then you go, then she's like now able to see that she has options. So instead of just going down the old route of just being, attacking, she's really internalizing that she has some agency in how she wants to navigate her relationships. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Well, I want to let everybody know, because there will be some people that are listening today that really resonate with what Wendy's talking about or what we've shared today, and that you want to explore and you want to take the conversation further. So I'm going to let you guys know where you can go to get more of Wendy. And I absolutely love this. Maybe had a little bit of a giggle today, but her website, kindlycutthecrap.com. You can head on over there. There is an option for you to be able to book in a discovery call with Wendy, and I would encourage you to do that. Have a bit of a chat with her. You can then explore whether or not working together is the right thing for you to do. But if you're experiencing any of these things, you want to find, I'm going to say, some inner peace, some get to know yourself better from the inside out, and maybe change your, internally and externally, then Wendy would be the right person for you to have a chat with. I want to say thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolutely lovely conversation. I appreciate your ability to be able to get people in the present moment and acknowledging all, firstly starting off with an acknowledgement to country. I absolutely love that. And then acknowledging and, being so mindful of what I've, of what's been going on in the last little while, and then just adding in a few little bits and pieces of picking up maybe on some of the things that are have been happening, and using those as examples for everybody else to use. So thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you. It's been lovely. I've really enjoyed the chat, and thank you for not being too scary. I did have one interview where I was very scared, so I really appreciate
Hopefully that's not me, not scary.
No, not at all. So I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've found something useful in that. Not everybody finds it useful, but if there's something useful, that's great. If it's not, well, have a. It's been lovely to be here. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
I think the segment, and this is also for our viewers too, you guys know I love to do this, but there's always some gems that come out of every single show. And I think if you go back to the middle part of the show where Wendy was actually taking us through taking me through some particular breathing exercises, I think if it's just that one thing, in those moments where you're feeling a little bit anxious, overwhelmed, or whatever the situation is, and you just need to take a moment, use those breathing techniques just to bring you back to the present moment and allow yourself some time to prepare for the next thing. So go forth, enjoy, and as I always say on the Unlocked Show, you got to go and live your life unlocked, because there's just no other way. Thanks so much for joining us, Wendy. I'll be back again, guys. Friday is another day that you will see me live on the Unlocked Show, 10 a.m. Brisbane time. And then again next week, we've got some amazing guests booked on the show. In fact, we are booked currently out to about September, October. I had a look at the schedule today. So we've got some really cool guests coming up, just like Wendy and the other guests that we've had on the Unlocked Show. But make sure you take what we talk about and you implement them into your life, because that's really, truly the only way that you make any change or any transformation happen. If you just do it once or twice, it might be fun for that moment, but it's not really going to be, it's not going to stick around. So thanks very much for joining us. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful week, and I'll see you guys again on Friday. Thanks, and see you then. Bye for now.